Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Unravel Your Mind. We're here to help transform relationships to love and life. I would love your questions in the chat. We don't have live Zoom today, so I can't hear your lovely voices, but you can write me a message in the chat section and I will be sure to answer your question. I have lots of questions that were submitted for this week's call, but I always love to hear what's on your mind. So even if you're watching this on replay, please jot me a little note and I'll be sure to answer it next week if you don't get it in on time for our live show today, Sunday, 11:11 Pacific time. So join me next week if you're catching this on replay, and hit the button, hit the bell, subscribe, like, and I would love to hear you and see you next time if you're not here live today. All right, well, let's jump right into it. There's several things that we're going to talk about today, some things that came in advance and some discussion points, actually. So let's go to the first question that came in. If I'm still working on self-love, should I refrain from being in a relationship? I know sometimes people think, well, I just need to love myself first and then I can be in a relationship. You can take that approach, but I would say that the best place to find out where you're at with self-love is actually in relationship, because you've got someone actively reflecting to you what your issues are, your triggers, your weaknesses, your hot spots, your love spots. And it doesn't mean you have to be in a relationship, because of course I do believe that the times alone and the times and the breaks in between are so good for that self-reflection and so good for that healthy space and place for you to really feel into what it is that you are working on. And as soon as you think you have it figured out, you know how this works. You're going to attract somebody to come in and reflect it right back to you. So there are little initiations here and there. And if it's not a lover, it's a family member or a coworker or a friend that helps us get these lessons. So I believe that we're always in relationship to either love or life. And self-love is something that we're working on along the way. And for many that have achieved a high level of self-love, you're just going to get more and more bigger and bigger initiations and lessons to get to that core wound that we all have, which is the wound of separation from source. So that's the journey. We're all on it and we're all walking each other home. So I say, go for it. Be in relationship. If you have someone that is of interest to you, that is not destructive, right? So I'm not saying stay in a relationship just for that. I'm saying get the lessons, and sometimes you need to get out and sometimes you need to stay in. But I don't think we have to do them alone. But it's also great when we have the time and the place where we can really do our own inter-reflection. So both are perfect, in relationship and out, but I wouldn't intentionally refrain from being in a relationship. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, give me some insights in the chat and I'd be sure to elaborate on that a little bit more. All right, next question. How do you overcome the power of mind loops? Yeah, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because sometimes we get these ideas in our head and we can't get them out. And they cause us great suffering at times. Sometimes they're great mind loops. Sometimes they're just like fabulous ones and they keep us in that high vibrational space. But it's the ones that cause us to just feel glum or disenchanted with life. And they're narratives, like literally narratives that just keep playing, those tapes in our mind that just keep going. And so it's all about mind control, right? It's about shifting our mind. But I think sometimes shifting our mind sounds easier than what it actually is, because when we've already experienced the feeling, it's really hard to shift the mind. And so I would say, step into shifting your heart. Step into shifting your actual experience in your body. Go pet your dog or your cat. Go touch a flower. Go do something that's very tactile, that transcends the mind, right? Yes, of course, you can do mantras, you can do affirmations, you can do all these things that are going to help switch the energy of the thoughts, but also just take advantage of the beauty of your environment. It might be that you love the feel of a pillow on your sofa. and just feeling that and feeling into that pleasure point. It might be just going outside and feeling the air on your face, right? It grounds us, it gets us in our body, it gets us to that place where we can really feel ourselves as opposed to listen to the mind. So experience through the heart, shift the heart space, shift that energy, and then the thoughts can shift. Sometimes it's too hard. We just keep going after the thoughts, and you can do that approach, but I really think shifting from the heart is the really blissful, juicy spot. Maybe it's that you go kiss your husband. Maybe it's that you smile at a stranger on the street. It can be easy things. It doesn't have to be difficult to find ways to shift your heart and to really feel into your body and have that feeling center. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say about that, actually, now that I was about to go to the next question, is it's also a little bit ironic, isn't it, that we know when we let go of these thoughts how good we feel. So why is it so hard sometimes to actually let go of them? It's like that simple. Let go. I have the 5 pearls of wisdom. I have a workbook that goes along with the Awakening and Healing Handbook. You can find it on bethbell.me, and I have them right here on my computer all the time. The 5 pearls of wisdom, and they are trust, intuition, transformation, letting go, and surrender. And there's a really big difference between letting go and surrendering. And there's a big difference between letting go, surrendering, and giving up, right? So really important to feel into where you're at. And if it's something that you need to let go of, a thought, an attachment, and then surrendering is really tightly wound with trust, right? Because when we trust, it's easier to surrender, right? So maybe you've done that exercise as a kid or at a workplace where you actually are falling back into the arms of colleagues, coworkers, or maybe a family, or whenever you've done this as a child. And it's that trust that allows you to surrender into the arms of the other people. It's so important for us to learn this because we actually get taught the opposite. We get taught that we have to do everything on our own. We have to be self-sufficient. We have to do, and we can't allow, because that sometimes can be viewed by societal norms as laziness. And so we need to get way beyond that, way, way, way beyond that, and really be in the surrender and the trust. Oftentimes letting go is a big part of that. So it ties in to how do we unravel the mind? We want to let go of these thoughts that are in that mind loop so that we can access the peace that passes all understanding, that keeps our hearts and minds open. So that's the really important thing to remember. All right, let's go on to the next question. The next question is, what do you think causes sexual or sensual attraction to another person? Well, I think this is kind of a loaded question. I love the question, by the way, but I think that there's a difference between someone that you may be attracted to who you don't know versus someone who you know. Let's start with the person that you know. Why is there an attraction? Why is there that chemistry that's there? I believe that that's a soul contract that you're here to work out oftentimes. In those soul contracts, when we've spent time with someone, because we attract people oftentimes through our likenesses, and our likenesses can be wounds, and our likenesses can be things that are healed and whole within us. But oftentimes we're attracting someone to help us with our own inner wounds. We've actually encountered something similar on a vibrational level as far as a wound is concerned with someone, not necessarily with them, but maybe in our life at some point. And so we share that commonality of that wound. And you know that old phrase, misery loves company. It's kind of that idea of attraction where you feel seen and heard, oftentimes subconsciously, on this wound that brings you together with someone. So there's actually an association that comes through the mind and into the body and makes you feel this energetic connection, which is legit and real. But it's something that yeah, it goes beyond the mind because it's in the subconscious, and it's like this attraction that brings you together with someone else. And I love those attractions. I think those attractions are fun. I think they're fun to explore. I think they're fun to dive deep into. I think they're fun to blow up because sometimes we get in there and they freak us out because it actually brings up a wound that we're actually called to heal. And that can get scary at times, whether it's an abandonment wound or some kind of self-deprecating thought wound that we have about ourselves from childhood. Someone mistreated us, someone abused us, whatever that might be. We didn't fit in, and we get attracted to other people that have those same core feelings and vibrations because it's at a cellular level. So our cells are actually communicating, I think, in the beginning more than more than anything as we get to know someone. So that kind of goes into the stranger aspect. I think, like magnets, we attract other people even when they're complete strangers, where we feel that magnetism towards them. Something about the vibration in their voice, something about the way they walk, something about the way they present themselves that gives us that magnetism. And I believe it's that cellular connection because it's a vibration that attracts one another. And then when we get into the relationship and we actually get to know the person, and things that we talk about consciously, things that happen subconsciously, the sensual connection gets like really locked in because we're on each other's life cords and we're deep into it. And then we get into a different level of offering. That's when we really get the wound that can come up and the trigger that can come up. Oftentimes we refer to relationships as the honeymoon phase, right? Where someone does everything right. And that's because we're just really locking in and connecting on that sensual, sexual energy because we vibrate at the same level with them. Our cellular, level is connected. And so that's really fun to get into that because the triggers start happening. It doesn't feel so fun, but I like to look at it as fun because if we're not here to learn, life would be boring, right? We're here to be blissful. We're here to have opportunities that show us where we are on our awakening journey. So it's actually, let's look at it as fun when these triggers come up, these things that just go, like, why is this person doing this to me? I was so madly in love with them, but then they did this. And so we have to get beyond what the mind wants to tell us and feel into what is the heart bringing forward for me to look at within myself, because you're asking that person to do something, say something, be something for you, for your journey. And that's where I think relationships can get really fun and really interesting, even when they don't feel so great. And when they feel great, it's great, right? But we want to be able to just recognize that we are attracting people for a reason. So that sexual, sensual energy, super important for us. And sometimes it's a love attraction. It doesn't have to be sexual. It can be that, we really have an attraction to a friend that's not sexual, but that's just like, wow, I just really, really get along with you. And that's again because you're sharing some kind of a vibrational level and they're offering you something. There might be some really big differences, but they're offering you a different way of seeing life through a different lens. And that is the beauty of all of our relationships here on planet Earth. All right, hopefully that answers your question. If not, put it in the chat and we'll just look over here on the live chat. I also wanted to say that the next question is actually an interesting one. How to overcome subconscious or conscious wounds, and is it different? I don't think the process is different. I think that it's great when you have consciousness about a wound. And I mean consciousness in the sense of awareness, not like that you're unconscious, like asleep or passed out. I mean that you have a level of awareness in your awakening journey that you can actually identify something. And I wrote down here, because this was actually a conversation that I had earlier this week. And so I submitted it as a question because it was a question that came to me in this conversation. And there was really 4 steps to a final outcome. And the final outcome is freedom. And I mean freedom in so many different ways, but freedom of the mind, especially because here on Unravel Your Mind, that's what we're here to do, is to get out of the suffering of the mind, because it's only the mind that causes the suffering. Yes, of course, you can have suffering, you have a cut, your physical body is suffering, but we're focused right now in this moment about the suffering of the mind and how that can create emotion within our body. So, step one, awareness. That's, like I just said, is having awareness about what the issue is that's being brought forward. Like, oh, I have something to work on. If you have awareness of that, that is a huge step, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of things to work on and they don't know that they have that to work on. Everyone else can see it, but they can't. So don't discount if you have awareness on something. That is step one, and it's a really, really important step. Now, step two is willingness. So you might actually know that you have this issue, but then you have to have a willingness to want to dive into it. A lot of people don't take this. A lot of people go to drugs and alcohol, or to abusing sex, or a number of things that they bring into their life that really distract them from doing the work, and distract them from the willingness of doing the work. All right, step three is realization that there's a new way. So there's a different way of looking at life. There's a different way of addressing an issue. There's a different way of viewing the situation, because you're looking at it from your lens. And that's what we do, is we build a lens. We build a lens based on our experiences. And so this is an offering to realize that maybe there's a different perspective that I could or should take a look at. All right. Step four is release. So once you've had awareness, you have willingness, and you have a realization that there's a new way, then you want to release it, right? You want to let it go, which we just talked about, and surrender into this newer way of thinking, this new possibility. And ultimately, the final outcome is freedom, right? Who doesn't want freedom in their life? So yeah, that is my 4-step approach to how to overcome subconscious or conscious dilemmas that we may have, wounds that we may have, situations that we're calling forward for our own growth and awakening. All right, let's see here. If there's any other questions in the live chat, please put them in. And another question is, why does the energy feel so heavy right now? There's so many things happening, and I think it's a beautiful time, and it's a beautiful time because the heaviness is us being willing to realize that there are some things up for release. And as the collective, not just everybody individually, people, I think, were maybe a little bit more individually doing their work here and there. And then when we had the pandemic, that was really helpful for all of us to really have to sit with the lower vibrational aspects of ourselves, the ideas about ourselves, the lives that we've created, and really letting that release and come forward. But fortunately or unfortunately, some people chose to shove it back down, right? And not address it. And that's what we don't want to do. We want to be able to find ways to release it and unravel the mind, unravel the ideas that we have around it, so that we can really be in the bliss of what our life has to offer, as opposed to the molasses of the shit that sometimes we attract in. And, it's taken us, in some cases, 30, 40, 50 years, depending upon how old you are, to build ourselves into these people, these characters. I'm the Beth Bell character, and I have all these life experiences that created a particular lens of which I see the world. And sometimes that lens works for me, and sometimes that lens works against me. And so let's come up with, what are these self-limiting beliefs, or the beliefs that just are no longer serving us. There is not truth in them. They feel like truth. In fact, just a kind of an interesting example. Last night I was out to dinner with some friends, and we had a fun conversation. And one of the individuals was raised Catholic, and before she got to that, she was talking about how she's just like a rule follower. And I was like, oh gosh, I didn't know that you were. I don't know her that well, and I didn't know you were a rule follower. And then her husband laughed and said, yeah, well, she's, she grew up Catholic, and I'm not knocking any particular religion. I'm just suggesting that, religion often gives us rules to follow, right? Truths, like, this is the truth, the Bible says. And while that might be, it might have some credence, there's a lot about religion, a lot about societal ideas and norms that are just thought constructs. They're ideas that an individual came up with, or a group of individuals came up with, that people then think they have to follow, right? I'm not saying like completely go off the rails. I'm just saying we have to be able to break through these beliefs so that we can tap into our inner wisdom, because it's like this gooiness, this stickiness that's all around us out here in the world. And because there are all these ideas that everybody says, you must follow this, you must do this, this is what keeps us all in order. And there is some validity in that, because it does provide a sense of organization to have rules. So I'm not saying that there shouldn't be rules. But what I'm saying is that there's oftentimes that rules and rituals and things that are not really based in who we really are unnecessary. And sometimes it's just fun to just have the freedom to break through and to just do things that are fun, right? Like, they don't have to be things that, intentionally hurt others. No, not maybe that kind of fun, but the kind of fun like where we really just break the rules to simply be free of the mental thought constructs that everybody wants to put on us. So going back to the question, why does everything feel so heavy right now? Because I think we're breaking through a lot of these big constructs. We're breaking through what feels so heavy, because there are rules that society, either through religion or through our communities, have put onto us and said, you need to do this, you need to be like that. When chances are we don't need to. We just need to be who we really are. And who we really are is the light of the world, right? Sounds maybe like a fantasy, but it's not, because it's where we came from. We came from a place where we were all in oneness, where we were all in community and connection and service to one another, where we all helped each other out. And through the years, whatever, we can go through the whole history of, industrialization and materialism and all these things that said, like, I need to get things for me. And that's not where we're at anymore. We're breaking through all those me ideas to us, to community, to connection, to love, getting beyond our individual self and looking at the collective. And so when we do that and we shine the light on the collective, when we shine the light on things that the collective have believed for so long, it can feel really, really heavy. I believe that we're moving through the most amazing time on planet Earth so far. I think we're moving through to a whole nother level. I mean, lots of people talk about this, lots of people who have a lot more insights and have studied it, or, really tuned into it a lot longer than I have, moving through the dimensions and coming out of just this third dimensional ideations to fourth, to fifth, and beyond. We can access these dimensions. We're part of all these dimensions. But we have to just want to have a little willingness to release and to let go of some of these ideas that we have about ourselves and others and people that we're in relationship with, looking at relationships differently. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers the question of why is it so heavy right now. Look at it as a really positive time. Look at it as a time when we're all coming together. I think some of the light workers, way showers, the people who are really committed to the work, may be experiencing in a different way a real heaviness, but I know the others are experiencing a deeper heaviness because they may not have the spiritual toolbox to actually dig themselves out of those mental thought constructs, those traps of the mind, and those mind loops that are happening. So let's help our brothers and sisters out. If you see somebody down, you see somebody who's, spinning out, you see somebody who's in a crazy thought loop, let's help them get out. And that doesn't mean that we go in with them. It means that we shine the light so they can see a different way. We can be compassionate and empathetic without giving our light away, without going into their storylines. It's so important right now. We got to continue to raise our vibration, rise above all of these narratives that are happening out there in the media and all these things. Yes, there's some crazy stuff. If you feel like you need to go watch a movie like Sound of Freedom or some of these things, they're heavy. I haven't seen it myself, but I think we need to have awareness about it. But I think more importantly, we need to shine the light and hold our own vibrational space to a whole nother level. That's what we're here to do right now on planet Earth. Get out of our own shit, help society get out of shit, and just help us rise above and raise our vibration so that all of that heaviness can fall away. It's falling away already at exponential levels. I think we're going to see a lot of interesting things coming in the future. There's tons of people, again, that are predicting lots of different things. I'm not here to predict that. I'm here to say, prepare yourself. And the best way to do it is to unravel your own mind and get to that place of freedom within you so you can tap into your inner wisdom, so that fear out there doesn't impact your process of decision making, that you can make the highest level of decision for yourself, as opposed to get into the muck of it all, right? Don't do that. We're not there anymore. We're not in the muck. We're rising above it all, rising and rising and rising. And the more we rise, we bring our brothers and sisters with us simply by being who we really are. It's not about doing. I'm a big doer. I love to do. I have to struggle with this all the time. It's about being. And so I would only offer that you really sit in the beingness of the beauty of who you are. Let everything come through you, which means you let it go, right? You let it bubble up and you let it go. Maybe one last thing I'll share, because I don't think we have any other questions. One last thing I'll share is, and I know I've talked about this before, but a dear friend of mine shared a story about how she was walking her dog and she saw this big German Shepherd pounding on the door as she was walking by, and didn't expect or anticipate that the dog was actually going to break free of the door. And once it did, even then she said, I've had a lot of dogs that bust out of their house and they run down the street. She didn't think that the dog was actually going to come and try to attack her and her dog, but it did. It ran right after her little one, tiny, cute little guy. Super cute little one. Looks like this. Grabbed her by the hindquarters and she screamed bloody murder and, was literally being attacked by this German Shepherd. And I think sometimes that's the trauma that we're experiencing in life, whether it's being chased by a dog or, lots of other things, that something financial happens, whatever it is, but it's trauma. And allowing ourselves to sit and release the emotion, right? So crying, taking a moment, not just trying to keep walking. Oftentimes when we fall, we're embarrassed and we want to just walk it off. And there's something to that. I'm not saying don't walk it off, but don't ignore the emotion that's deep within. So my friend had to cry it out. She had to sit on the side of the curb and just really release her feelings and feel into it and feel what it's like to experience that trauma. And I think what's beautiful about that is it reminds us about how there's so many individuals that are suffering great trauma on so many levels. And sometimes we don't really know to the depths. And I'm not suggesting we have to go there. I'm not suggesting we all have to be chased by a dog and scared out of our wits. I'm just saying take those opportunities to really feel into what that feels like and how you can shake it off for yourself. Because as you shake off your own trauma, you shake off, literally, I talk about this, about the shaking ashram in my book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics. I can't remember the chapter off the top of my head, but I talk about Ratu Baghusa's shaking ashram. And I talk about how we shook for 6 hours a day, 3 different sessions. And you just, you're just really shaking the energy out of your cells. And as remedial as it might sound, it's an incredible technique. It's one that animals and dogs use all the time. When they get a trauma, their response is to shake it off. So sometimes it can be that simple. Just don't shove it down. All right. I think we are coming down to the end here. If I've missed anyone's questions, please let me know. I will certainly answer them next week. I'm here every Sunday, 11:11 Pacific time. I would love to hear what's on your mind. I'd love to help answer it and help unravel the mind, because we're here to transform our relationships to love and life. So subscribe, hit the bell. You'll get notifications when we go live next. And I so appreciate you. I appreciate all your support and all your love and all the questions that you submit. And so I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, wishing you much bliss and love on the journey.